Yeah, Will from Cardboard Minutes, and I've got Faran and Nabeel here with me, and we have been having some discussions lately about Cult of the New. So to explain what this means, in case you're not aware, is the idea of, it's probably even part of, I would say, the human condition, where we get excited for new things, you know, the shiny new products that are coming out, whether it's because they're being hyped up by other content creators or by advertising from the companies themselves. We get excited for the new stuff, and we end up acquiring more and more games every year, even though we are running out of room on our shelves and having to stack them in piles and sell them.
For better or worse, you know, we live in a consumer society, so
yeah, and
we're a product of our environments, I guess.
And right around the time when we're filming this and the video comes out, there are a lot of content creators that are putting up best of last year lists, best of 2021.
Right. Yeah.
These are the best games that came out last year. So there's even more push than usual towards, you know, what Kickstarters came out, what's coming out next year, like, you know, or this year in 2022, that we're excited for. And, you know, I thought this would be a good time to reflect back on the past a little bit. And, you know, we played Orleans and did a playthrough, if you want to watch it. And we just played Altiplano, which is almost a sequel to Orleans. And I just want to do a quick little discussion on games that are not new. Great games that are maybe 10 plus years old and still in our collection. Still ones that we feel either still hold up or still that have not been replaced by newer games.
Right.
So, you know, why don't we do we'll start with like a recommendation each, and then I've got some questions for you guys. So, you know, looking through my Board Game Geek collection list, I think you guys probably felt the same. I do own quite a lot more games than I realized are older than 10 years old.
Yeah, for sure.
I felt like because of how much I've bought in the last few years that they were all newer games, but really I've got at least a couple dozen games that are 10 plus years old. And I'm not talking the games that like the mass market games that are in a bin in the garage somewhere because I inherited them from my family collection or something. I'm talking like...
That's how my board game collection started.
games that I've added to my board game collection since I became a hobbyist board gamer. And so my first kind of recommendation here is Robinson Crusoe.
Is that an older one here?
It is. It is just at about 10 years old now. And they did have I guess you could say they've had a couple of reprints, actually. Yeah. They had a reprint that redesigns a lot of the artwork in the box and up the component quality. Yeah. But then they also had a Kickstarter last year that added a guidebook that had even more scenarios.
Fun.
But just the game itself, I think, still holds today as one of the best survival. You know, it's like you're stranded on an island and you're trying to survive and explore the island.
Work against the wilderness. Yeah.
Working against the wilderness, against the weather. Yeah. You know, and it still has one of the most unique timing mechanics where you may encounter something like, you know, like, oh, you ate this berry and it gave you some health, but you know, take this event card and shuffle it into the event deck.
But now it's gonna.
And next time it comes back, something's gonna happen. And
I haven't played Robinson Crusoe, but I've heard that it can be quite punishing.
It's so punishing. I played it once, and I think we played it twice that night because our first playthrough we lost in like the first 10 minutes or something.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I'll do a review of it.
We'll do a review later, but oh man, it can be bad.
Yeah,
stay tuned.
All right, Nabeel, what do you got?
So my first recommendation for games that are more than 10 years old would be Dominant Species. So Dominant Species is probably one of the first games that I bought that was on the heavier side. And I still love it to this day. I think it was published I've got it written down here. It was published in 2010. So it's 12 years old at this point, almost, thereabouts. I still love the game. You know, I love the theme. So if you don't know, in the game, it's you take control of one of a number of different animal types. So one person's reptiles, one person's the mammals, one person's the insects, and so on. and each animal type has a special power, and you're trying to build out this board of tiles by placing these different environment tiles around the board, and and you're trying to vie for dominance on those tiles to gain points and to also play these really powerful event cards. And the game can be pretty swingy. You know, some people find that you can, there are some cards where you work your entire game up to a certain point, and then one of your opponents plays one card and just destroys your entire game.
Yeah.
That can happen, but I just love how much planning and forward thinking the game takes. I think the game needs a reprint and need to upgrade some of the components, because it is definitely not one of the best looking games.
Right.
But it has the potential to be. Although I think they're doing a reprint of it this year, but not changing anything.
Okay.
So
No, that's a difficult one because the designer passed away a few years ago, and the license for the game was kind of stuck in limbo for a while. But I think their family just had recently released the license to it.
Right.
Yeah, there is a newer one that
reprinted.
There's a newer version that just came out called Dominant Species Marine.
Yeah, the Marine. Yeah.
Very similar game, except you're underwater in this case, and I think they've streamlined some of the the planning phase where you place your workers. But I haven't played it.
Cool.
But yeah,
We'll try it out.
Run.
Okay, so my first one also, it's going to be a big box game.
Very big box.
Very big box.
Yeah.
However, the big box is more recent. The game was originally published in 1995. So do the math. It's almost
30 years old.
30 years old.
27.
In a few years, it'll be 30 years old. So this one's El Grande. And I like this one a lot. It's one of my favorite area control games. And it can be very cutthroat, but it stands the test of time. It does a lot of things very in a simplistic manner, but you're choosing one of five cards, and you're going to do the action of that card, which allows you to manipulate the pieces on the board and gain certain advantages. But it's a ton of fun. It's got some hidden stuff where you can actually put some of your pieces in a tower, and you don't know kind of the majority of that tower is until it gets revealed at the end of the round. So it's got that fun kind of reveal, which you never know how it's going to go. So I enjoyed it a lot. The big box kind of adds about 6 expansions, and a lot of people, I haven't played all 6 of them. A lot of people have said the 6 expansions aren't really even necessary. The base game is so good on its own. So I highly recommend that one, and it's for that reason it's still a part of my shelf.
Yeah, we played this for the first time fairly recently, within the last few months. I remember, and I'm not a big fan of area control games in general, but I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty swinging, but it was still fun.
It's very swingy, and so you got to go into it knowing
Things
that
change quickly and surprisingly.
But I think that's the nature of a lot of good area control games.
I would hope there would be more tactics behind it or strategy behind it. I felt this one could just be more luck based. Like you got the one card you needed to.
But I mean, like
around.
in the area control games where you have the option to just kind of turtle and sit there, and it doesn't create. It's not as fun as other games where there's a lot more interaction, things are more dynamic, things change all the time, and you're kind of having to constantly pivot and be tactical. And I think this game has that.
I want to play it right now.
So speaking games that are 20 years old or older, right? Can you guys think of any games that you have in your collection that are 20-ish years old, 20 plus years?
I can.
Not listing anything already on the table here, but I'm going to say Hive is 20 years old now, at this point. It's a little more than 20 years old.
Didn't know it was that old.
And there's a lot of board games that feel timeless.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, El Grande doesn't look timeless.
No.
Right? but it's still very, very beige.
Mechanically, it's
pretty timeless. Hive is, the tiles are, they're almost chess-like in terms of their elegance. And so you would never know, looking at the game, that was not released yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
And the game mechanics, I think, are still unique enough and different enough as far as abstract games go that you could pull out and introduce a new board gamer or anyone who's interested in chess or other abstract games, and they would instantly take to it without feeling like you pulled this out of the box in the attic somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah, I played it with you once. It was a lot of fun, and I'm not a big chess guy. I enjoy the odd game, but or similar games. There's been a few games that have taken that chess mechanic of kind of two sides of the board I forget what the Japanese themed one is called. Where you're kind of rotating the cards.
Onitama? No.
Onitama.
Onitama, yeah.
Onitama, we played it. Take it or leave it. A lot of people liked it, but Hive was a lot of fun, and kind of it doesn't even have a board. You're just using the pieces, and
it's very different than your typical abstract game.
Yeah, it didn't have a board, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, I've got one on the table here that's more than 20 years old, but so I'll talk about it now.
Sure.
So this one is almost as old as I am, actually.
Interesting.
Wow. So how long have you? Tell us what it is and how long have you owned it for?
So this game is called X-Men Under Siege. I think it was it may have been published under a previous name as well, after a different name after this one. It's something to do with like Xavier's Mansion or something like that. So they're both pretty much the same game. This game was published in 1994, so it's a bit younger than us.
Yeah.
But it's the oldest game that I have in my collection, and I've had this game. Actually, so I had this game when I was a kid. And I'd play it with my cousin all the time because we were both huge X-Men fans. And this was it was one of the first board games that I played that wasn't like Monopoly or Risk or Scrabble.
Sure.
Yes.
One of those mass market games. And it was the first game I played that had miniatures that you could paint if you wanted to. So in the game, basically, you're creating a team of X-Men. Each X-Men has different powers, and they each have their own miniature, and you're going through the X mansion, and you're trying to fight back the enemies that have invaded the mansion and do different missions and stuff. So it's a pretty simple game. But it's a lot of fun. And I had this when I was a kid. And then we sold it in a garage sale. As we did when I was a kid because it moved around a lot.
Yeah.
That's the garage sales. And then I got it back probably about like 10 or 12 years ago. And to be honest, I have not played it since I got it back. But this game has so much nostalgia for me that it's never going to leave my collection. And it's X-Men. I'm a sucker for anything X-Men.
Yep, that's pretty cool. That's a cool story.
Yeah, so that brings me to what other games did you guys maybe own as a kid that maybe it was a terrible game, but like what did you grow up with that was not a standard mass market game? Was there anything? Like I had the Mad Magazine board game.
Oh yeah.
Which is essentially Monopoly knockoff, right? But it was not a Monopoly game, and there was a lot of just weird stuff in it, and that brand of humor that kind of threw the game into weird things. And that's, I never got introduced to anything other than mass market games.
Yeah, no, same for me.
Growing up, but we still played games regularly growing up, so.
Yeah,
that's what I had.
We played the Monopolies, and that's kind of what we grew up on. We did the Snakes and Ladders. Played a game called Ludo, which is essentially Sorry.
Parcheesi is another name for it.
Yeah, Parcheesi. Sorry and Ludo is very similar. So those are kind of games. Now that I go back and look at it, back home in Pakistan, we play a game called Carrom board.
Carrom board. I was just going to say Carrom board, yeah.
Which is a dexterity game now that you think about it.
It's basically like Crokinole.
Yeah, it's very similar.
It's very similar. So we used to play that growing up a lot. So those games are all like ancient. Just looking at maybe what's not on the table right now that I own that's about 20 years old. Lost Cities is a great little two-player card game.
It is, yeah.
And we're gonna have a visitor here very soon who's curious about our collections. So Lost Cities is a game that I own a reprint of, but originally was released, hey Loki, in 1999. So so it's about 23, 24 years old.
23 years old, something like that, yeah.
So, and I play that with my wife a lot. She likes it, and it's a quick and easy and cutthroat game, which I tend to enjoy. So yeah, that's what I got.
All right. What games have you guys maybe sold and then reacquired later, regretting? I mean, I know Nabeel just mentioned the X-Men game.
Yeah.
You had to get rid of it, but you wanted to chase it again as an adult. Faran, is there anything that you maybe got rid of at some point
Yeah.
and decided, I really need to find a copy of that again?
So I got 2 titles under that category. One is a more recent game called Blood Rage, which I sold. And I played it at 2 players with actually Nabeel.
Yeah.
And we found it very, very swingy, and it still is. I played it at 4 players, and I enjoyed it quite a bit more.
Yeah.
So I decided to give it another shot, and I picked up a copy of Blood Rage, and so it's on my collection. It's on my shelf right now. So I think the best player count for that game is 3 or 4, so which is why I picked it up again. So now that we're playing a little bit more in a larger group, I thought it would get an opportunity to come to the table a little bit more. I picked up an
I
expansion.
need to give that another shot because we played it twice at 2.
Yeah.
And both times I had like double your points.
Yeah. And
and without feeling like I really did anything.
And it wasn't like, okay, I could have easily won that game if I played something different. No, it was like you felt very helpless in those 2-player games. So I think 2 is not a good player count. So for that reason,
For any area control, really, though.
for area control,
Unless it was designed for 2.
Yeah.
yeah, specifically for 2. So Blood Rage, and then a more recent one, which is an older game, which we just mentioned at the top of the video, is Orleans. So I did own Orleans way back at the beginning of when I was starting to get into the hobby and starting my collection, to grow my collection. I ended up selling it because the setup was far too long and the teardown was far too long for what I... Attack! So I sold it, and it just wasn't hitting the table. I played it again recently with Will, and we did a playthrough on the channel.
I was there too.
I meant to say at Will's place, of course, and Nabeel was there. And we had a blast with it. It was
great.
It was a great time.
It was excellent.
We just replayed Altiplano, we played Altiplano just as a comparison because it's with the same designer. And in my opinion, I think we all agree Orleans was the more superior game.
Both excellent games, but I think we like Orleans better.
Well, it's a cleaner experience. So I think for that reason, I might pick it up again. I haven't bought it yet, but it's in my cart, and we'll see what happens.
I have yet to reacquire a game that I have not already owned.
Yeah.
But there's definitely one from my childhood, I guess you could say, the Crokinole.
Yeah.
I remember playing Crokinole, at friends' cottages and stuff growing up, and it always seemed to be like a cottage game, something that you'd sit around in the evening, when the mosquitoes were too bad outside, and flicking the Crokinole board. So I got one of those finally.
Cool.
I don't think I've sold the game and then bought it.
No, but you've certainly gone after a game that you've lost at some point in your childhood. All right, I would say, what's your one of your oldest games that is not like a mass market game?
That's
and oldest not as in how long you've owned it for,
Yeah.
but your oldest published game.
oldest published game.
Yeah, so I'm going to discount things like, Go, that's like, 1,000+ years old, or chess, or any of these kind of games.
Right.
But kind of a modern designer board game.
Let me take a look.
I'm going to talk about Survive, The Escape from Atlantis. I didn't realize how old this was because I only acquired it in the last couple of yeyears. But I believe it was published in 1984, I think, so it's definitely in the No, it's older than that. It's I think it was 82, so it's right at 40 years old now.
Wow.
And I would not have expected that because the visual design is clean, the gameplay is fairly clean. It's a little cutthroat and wild. It's not as smoothed out and even an experience that a lot of modern board gamers are looking for. It can be very kind of insane, but it's because you're moving sharks around and eating other players' swimmers as they're trying to escape an island.
But it's insane in a clean way.
Throwing them in the water, but it's everyone's getting attacked by sharks and having their boats flipped over by whales and stuff. So it spreads itself out, and it still plays quite well for a 40-year-old game.
It's not bad.
Nice.
What do you got?
I'm going to be really boring.
Yeah.
And so technically my oldest game is Scrabble, but we're not going to talk about Scrabble because everyone knows what Scrabble is.
Yes.
But I'm going to be really boring, and the next oldest game that I have besides X-Men is Settlers of Catan.
Okay.
Nice. What was that? What was the first published date on that?
95.
95? Okay.
94, 95, somewhere around there. I think everyone has heard of that game at this point. It is definitely... It was probably one of the first games that I played that got me into the hobby more seriously.
Yeah.
As it is for many people, it's probably one of the
Definitely.
top, if not the, most popular gateway game.
Yep.
I haven't played it in a long time. I would play it if somebody wanted to play it.
Yep.
But I feel like I'm gravitating away from it more. Not because I'm like, oh, I'm over that game or anything.
Yeah.
But there's other games that I would rather play.
Yep.
But I'd be happy to play it if somebody wanted to play it or hadn't played it. I think it's always a good game to introduce to new people.
I think I've played Catan a total of maybe twice. I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I haven't played it
I've
enough at all.
I've played it way too many times.
Tons of times.
Yeah. And it was one of the first games that my wife and I picked up. I think some friends introduced us to it. My wife and I both had some history of board game or playing games with our families, but we hadn't really looked at modern games until we played Catan with some friends, and we picked up some other ones I'll talk about later. But even at our board game meetup that is on hiatus right now because of the COVID lockdowns. Catan was still getting played often multiple times per night.
Wow.
Every week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big meetup, so, games get played, a lot of games get played at a time.
Sure.
But just the fact that it's out all the time and people come in looking for it or are messaging on Meetup ahead of time saying, hey, we're looking to play Catan. Anyone else interested? And then, 4 or 5 people will show up and start a game.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's impressive the staying power it has.
And it's got so many variants now.
Yeah, I haven't played any of the expansions of the variants or anything, but just the base game, I think it's a classic.
It's a classic on its own. For me, I think I have a game. I was scrolling through my BGG in terms of a publish date, and I have a game which is, I don't know if it kind of falls into the mass market category, but it's called Mastermind. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. And,
yeah, my wife owned a copy of that growing up. That was one of her favorite games as a kid.
Yeah, and I play it with my daughter a lot now, and so she's slowly getting into board games, and that's one that I play with her just to kind of get her thinking. And it's a 2-player game where you've got the hidden color combination behind one player's screen, and then the other player's trying to guess that color combination based on the hints that the other player gives them in terms of what the order is, if the order is correct, or you've got one color right or one color wrong. So that's an easy one for us to play, and I still enjoy playing that one with the right people. So that's probably the oldest one. That the first published day on that one I have is early 70s, so 1971.
Okay. Yeah.
But obviously it's still in production and it's still available now. So.
Yeah, that's a good one. I remember playing that game with my cousin a lot too.
Yeah.
He used to have a copy. I didn't have my own copy.
Yeah.
We played it a lot for sure. That's a good one.
It's a good one.
All right. What else you got for recommendations?
All right.
I have. Well, I mean, if we're talking anything 10 years and older,
10 plus years.
10 plus years, I got lots.
We're not going to go too deep here.
No.
Maybe if people are interested, we'll do like a top 10 or top 5 list of 10 plus year old games. We're just going to stick to generic culture related stuff.
But so the other one that I have here on the table is Ticket to Ride, but specifically the Europe edition of Ticket to Ride.
That's my favorite version too.
It's my favorite version of the game. I played the original North American one. It's good, but Ticket to Ride Europe is better. I mean, it adds a couple of things.
Small tweaks, yeah.
Small tweaks that make the game a lot more open. And you're not...
And more interesting.
More interesting as well, for sure. And it was published in 2005. And there are so many map editions you can buy for it. There's, it's a classic. My fiance loves this game. It's one of the games that she will always want to play.
Yeah, I'll never turn down a game of Ticket to Ride.
It's always fun.
It's always fun.
Yeah, for sure. You can't go wrong with Ticket to Ride.
Yeah, it's great to bring new gamers into the hobby, and that's one. I think it was one of the first 5 games that I got. As I was growing into the hobby,
can you remember the first 5 games you got? I can remember mine.
Ticket to Ride.
Okay.
7 Wonders, Pandemic, Codenames, and can't remember the. So those were the top 4 in some order, and then
Was it Bezer Wizard?
No, Bezer Wizard I got later on. I played that. That was one of the
That was
first
one
ones.
that we played, and then
But those were the first 4 that I remember placing an order for. Code names you gave to me as a present.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I can remember the first few games that my wife and I picked up, and most of them did not stick with her.
Yeah.
You know, but we didn't know what we were getting into at the time.
Yeah.
And they were mostly recommendations from whatever local board game store we bought from. And terrible recommendation, that I will have to say. But like we already knew, and because we played them with friends, and we picked up Ticket to Ride Europe and Catan.
Yeah.
But then we also got Race for the Galaxy, which my wife hates. I love it. I think
a good game.
I've done a review on the channel, and it's a fantastic game. Battlelore, which is a kind of like a fancy version of Memoir 44.
I see.
And it has since had a revamp, which did way more cool things with it, and then has disappeared since then. But I mean, I think everyone remembers those like first few games.
The first few games.
Into their modern board gaming collections.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, Catan, obviously. Dominant Species was another one.
Yeah, you had a copy of Terra Mystica.
I had Terra Mystica. That one it didn't land for me.
Yeah, and then you
much,
sold it.
And then I sold it. And I can't remember the rest of them, to be honest.
Yeah. I remember seeing your shelf. You had some good ones that you still have, and then some that you just sold. Ticket King of Tokyo you had, and
I still have that one. Yeah.
So you had some good ones. So I have one more that I'd like to recommend. It's by Dr. Reiner Knizia, who's done, I think, over what we're talking about, 200 games.
200 something games.
But this is one of...
And not all of them good either.
Not all of them are good.
But he has had a lot of hits too.
But a lot of them are good. And Through the Desert is one of them that is really, really good. It's not a heavy game. It's very light. Simple mechanics. You're placing literally 2 camels on your turn. You're trying to create a caravan around the desert, connecting different points of interest, trying to block off different parts of the map to score points, all the while where the other players are going through your caravan and blocking you off and trying to do the same thing. So very simple. Depth to complexity ratio is very high on this one, where it's a very simple game, but it can provide you with a really good punch in about 45 minutes to under an hour. And this one is very, very old as well. I think it's
it is.
early mid-90s or late 90s. So
and then Reiner Knizia is a designer who likes to build upon his previous mechanics that he's used. I mean, maybe his games are excellent, but it just reminded me that Babylonia, which is one of his newer games, uses a lot of the same mechanics, but tweaked in little ways.
Small ways. He's done, I think, 3 of them that are very similar in terms of mechanics, where you're putting stuff down and trying to connect your pieces on the board that are elsewhere. But the small tweaks. So
we just played one that's, I don't know if it's similar to that, but we just played Witchstone.
Witchstone,
which was excellent. I really liked it.
It's an excellent game, and it uses a mechanic from one of the other games called Ingenious, which I also have.
You're putting tiles down, trying to connect them to other tiles,
and then you're doing actions based on how many you've connected. So he reuses them, but he tweaks the game enough to where makes it a whole new game.
Yeah, he is a genius. That's for sure.
So another one that I would highly recommend that actually it's really, really old. I'm not even sure how old it goes, like how far it dates back, but it's a game called Pit.
Ancient Rome. No.
like the classic card game.
The card game, the stock market card game.
Yeah.
It's a game where there's these cards, and each of the cards it has like different commodities on it, and the commodities are worth different points if you collect all of that commodity, and so everyone gets dealt a hand of cards. And they're trying to trade cards among each other. And you can trade multiple at a time, and it's just pure chaos.
Havoc. I played it once.
Pure chaos. People are yelling at you. It's like
literally
you're
the
trying
stock
to make
market.
these deals, and God help you if you're that one person who's left with there's that one card left that you're trying to trade, because nobody will trade with you because they know that if they give you that one card, that could be the one that you need.
Yeah.
But it's always hilarious, and it's a fun. I always have fun playing it.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna add in. I'm gonna jump in. Still want to hear from Franz.
Sure.
Carcassonne is also I think it's 20 years old now.
Yeah.
And this is another one of like the first like 5 games that I ever bought in my collection. And we picked up the travel version, which is in a bag.
Oh, wow.
In the bag, you lay down the bag flat, like a cloth bag.
Yeah.
And you lay down flat, and the printing on the bag is the scoring board.
Oh, wow.
Kind of thing. So it's like it's super old, retro. Like the expansions are not compatible because the tiles are all different size and stuff. But it's the same art and it's the same game, and it has still always been good.
Yeah, that's again one of my early ones. I think this was numbered in top 10 or 15 of the first 15 games that I bought, but still. I think it's from 2000. I like it a lot. I mean, I don't play it as much because we have so many new Cult of the New, but it's staying in my collection because it's an easy one to pull out with people that have never played board games, and it's easy, 5-10 minute explanation.
Yeah. And going back to Cult of the New a little bit here.
Okay.
How many games do you guys have pre-ordered estimate? Because I don't remember no offhand,
including Kickstarter.
Or Kickstarter that you were expecting. So like I'm not even saying games that like there's a lot of games we're all looking at and speculating for the next year. But like what have you already bought that's coming in this year?
Yes.
Right? Because I know we talk about older games but we are still full prey to.
Oh yeah, I am 100% guilty
things.
of Cult of the New, but I've got obviously a bunch of Kickstarters.
Sure.
So I've got 1, 2.
I think you have a handful of like 10 or so.
I have five Kickstarters.
5 Kickstarters.
That should be delivered this year.
Yeah, I've got about 5 that are due this year. Plus another several games that have been pre-ordered.
Right.
That should be delivering.
At retail, yeah.
At a retail, that should be delivering this year.
Yeah, I'm more of a retail guy. When Nabeel counts his tally, I'm more of a retail guy myself. So I tend to, back Kickstarters only if it's a group pledge and like a bunch of people are going, so I can, save on the shipping a little bit and save on the cost. But I think I have about 3 or 4 Kickstarters coming in. And then I have about 5 or 6 games that I've got pre-ordered on retail that are either close to being out or are out and should be delivered, shortly. So,
and this is how bad this is. Most of them I have not played yet.
Yeah. Right.
Like they are purely off of reviews or speculation.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them I have read the rule book. A couple of them I have played, like Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Yeah.
We played Faran's copy, and then we've all pre-ordered our own copies.
Yeah.
But many of them, we haven't seen a whole lot on, other than just the excitement behind it.
Yeah. And that the hype gets you for sure. So when you're part of those Facebook groups or that you follow those folks on that have their YouTube channels that do reviews. And they hype up a game to a point where you're like, okay, I got to get this before it sells out so that I'm not waiting, and you got that FOMO factor where you're sitting and like looking at other people's pictures and playthroughs.
And there's always that sort of very sort of tricky, dangerous justification of, well, if I don't like it, I'll just sell it. I'll just sell it on Facebook.
At a loss. If you can sell it.
But I mean, whether you can or can't is irrelevant. The fact is, you have that option.
That justification.
And then, therefore, that justification can be easily, put you over the edge.
You take it off your hands. But yeah, that's the nature of the hobby, right? I guess you buy stuff hoping that you like it, and then it comes through and it doesn't quite mesh what your expectations were, and then you end up offloading it and getting something else. So that's a cycle.
That's a cycle. And I always say there are worse things you can spend your money on.
Yeah, I agree. It's true. Very true. And you know what? We do actively play our games.
We do.
Yeah.
Make sure our collections are massive, and the play is the playlist is a very long queue, you could say.
But we do
play a lot together with family or friends, solo games. So games do hit the table. Maybe not a lot of times in a year, but like our collections do still get played.
Yeah.
And if they don't, we pair them out and replace them with new ones.
Replace them with new ones, exactly.
All right. Well, anyways, thanks guys for the quick discussion on Cult of the New. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Let us know what is your oldest game in your collection that is not a mass market game. We all have some pretty strange ones. I'd love to hear more about what you guys got. So, thanks again for watching.
See you next time.